All right, if there's no objections, I'm going to get started because I have a lot of content today, and I want to leave time for Q&A. So thank you, everyone that is here and everyone that will be watching later. My name is Billy Carlson. I'm a design educator at Balsamiq, and this webinar is about copying as a way to learn interface design. And I think it's also copying as a way to learn anything and sort of being introduced to the idea that copying stuff is something we've done a lot throughout our lives, and you can apply it to the design field, which kind of seems like it's not typically something you would hear all the time. So let me walk you through it. I'm really excited to share this stuff. First, I want to quickly talk about privacy. We always talk about this stuff at Balsamiq. So we are recording this webinar. We're going to post it to our YouTube channel. We also have a webinar page on the BWA, the Balsamiq Wireframing Academy. We are using this new platform, Google Meet, to record it, to host it. So we're not exactly sure how anonymous you can remain during the recording. So if you do choose to participate in the Q&A or anything, you may appear as part of the recording. We're still working through this. This is our first time again, so let us know. Also, I want to mention a few things. We built this new webinar internal hosting tool so we can get off of Zoom and we can sort of control the privacy better. So our wonderful founder, Peldy, built this great registration page to allow us to collect your registration, email you a reminder, email you the recording, and then after that, we just get rid of all of your data because we don't want to keep it. One quick note, we realized today that the countdown was off. So if the countdown confused you, sorry, we'll fix it. But yeah, let's dive in. So I wrote this article about copying as a way to learn UI design a few years ago, actually. And it kind of came up as, the reason why I wanted to write it actually is because it's something that I learned probably halfway through my career. I was probably a mid to more senior level designer when this kind of came up. And I've been using it as sort of a design manager and a design leader to help people who are new to design learn UI design. Sorry, I just saw a message. Every time a message pops up, I get distracted. Anyway, so this is something that I've used as a design leader. I have a team of designers. The first day they start on my team, especially if you're like an intern or entry level, I would have you copy a few screens using the tools that we use. So like if I used Sketch, I would have you open Sketch and copy a few screens of our interface that we're working with, just so you can get really familiar with what we're working with and you can learn the tool a little better. So I'm going to dive in, but I'm going to first broadly talk about understanding copying as a learning tool. What I wrote in my article, and I think it's very true, is we learn so many things by copying, at first at least. So I wrote about sports. Imagine if you had to learn how to kick a soccer ball the right way on your own, or throw a baseball or hit a baseball. I like to play hockey, so shoot a hockey puck. You usually are taught by someone showing you the right way, and you copy them and you mimic them. Think about how you learn to play music. You don't instinctively know how to play a violin or how to hold the bow and all those things. You're shown the right way to do it, and you sort of mimic the person teaching you over and over, and that's how you learn. And so the genesis for me applying this to UI design came from this video from an interview series that my friend did many, many years ago, and it just really resonated with me.
What would that one bit of advice be?
This is maybe a little unconventional, but whether you're building web pages or designing logos or editing film or creating music or doing print layouts, I would suggest that a really beneficial thing for you to do is to rip something off that you love. And by that, I mean find something that speaks to you, a design, a logo, a film sequence, something that you really admire for the way that it's put together, and build it yourself. Start with a poster that you love, maybe from the Bauhaus, from Switzerland, and put it side by side on your desktop with a blank Illustrator document and build that poster. Spec the type perfectly. Set up the grid the same way. Find out why things go where things go. Find out why particular scenes in a film sequence are edited together in the fashion they are, and the time that they are, and the way that the cuts work. What you're really doing in this situation is you're working on your craft. You're looking at something that you really admire, and you're trying to really get into the seat of the person who built this thing to begin with, to get into their head, to see why they made the practical decisions that they made in creating this, whether it's a logo or a web page or anything else. I'm not suggesting you take your ripped off item and represent it as your own. I think you're doing this for the drawer, so to speak. You're doing this for yourself, but I think it can be very beneficial, and not only that, it's a lot of fun too. Awesome. So there's my advice.
Great advice. So rip people off for the sake of
that should start a comment thread, I guess.
What would that one bit of advice?
So again, I still love hearing that because it was something I never was told that was allowed. I went to graphic design. I have a degree in graphic design. It's called visual communication if you're in, at a university. And that was pretty much strictly forbidden. And when I heard that, it just really made sense to me. And I really liked it, and I went out and started doing it. I really like Jim Kudal. You may know of a brand that he helped start called Field Notes, so you can check out any of his stuff. I just want to say a quick shout out to Mig. He made this great interview series, again, many years ago called Humble Pied, and I will link to it in the show notes, I guess, the webinar notes. And you can check out these great interviews. But so I wanted to cover really quick, sorry, that I really like that he said you're working on your craft, because the first thing I think of when I'm considering, or how I think about learning UI design, is it's more of a craftsman's skill than it is an art form. And then the second part is you're really getting the seat of the person who built it. You're really starting to see the nuances of what make it great and what make it good and why things go where they go. And I think that just really resonated with me. Again, going back to the craftsman, the skill, I think UI design is, again, something pretty much anyone who's interested can learn how to do and do well. You just have to, analyze what's out there, work on it, practice it a lot. And, it also helps to have someone who is more of a master that can help you, a professional that can help guide you. So this idea of copying is really old. When I was studying art, one of the things that we did often was we did copy drawings from, famous master artists of the Renaissance. It's very, very popular way to teach painting, oil painting especially. I saw this quote from Leonardo da Vinci, and again, it's reinforcing the idea that copying from a professional is a great way to understand the nuances. And this is just a quick plug for another article about copying that I will link to from Eric Kennedy that I thought was great. So why is it so effective? Well, the first reason is you really need to study it. You really need to see how it's constructed. And if you only do that, and it really is really helpful if you start recreating it. When you start recreating it, you notice what UI elements are being used, and that's extremely important if you want to be a UI designer, is to understand the elements, the components, the stuff that's used to build an interface. Then once you notice the components, you'll notice that they're starting to develop patterns, and you'll see patterns being used and reused. And all of this leads to what is referred to commonly as the designer's eye. And you can look into an interface and see the components that made of, the patterns that are used and reused, and why they're so effective. So I used Spotify as a great example in my article for copying, because there's a lot of nuance in the interface that you might not notice right away. So in my article, I recreated it. This is a more HD version, but you can see a lot of the nuances in the color that they use here. This is white. It's also large and bold, but they use all capital letters here. And the actual real interface, it is tracked out. I'm not sure if you can see that, but there's a lot of spacing between each letter. It's all capital letters. And this is sort of like a label that they use here, here, and here. I'm gonna switch back to this. But what you can see is also they use gray color to sort of push it back into the background, to have less hierarchy, to less prominence on the page. So they do that with a lot of different areas. So this is bright colored, this is bright colored, where you're at is, and also the names of the playlists. And that's done intentionally so you can easily see the main things that they want you to see first, right? They're showing you these are in your face, these are what we want you to interact with. And then the secondary information is only if you're really interested and you want to look. I actually never really noticed this until I recreated it and copied it. So here's another example of showing Spotify, but without any of those little details added. So it's essentially the same layout, but I didn't change any of the colors. And it's really just the opacity of white. So now here's what it looks like if you do that. That nuance to me was only really seen once I copied it. And I think it's a fantastic design. I think Spotify does a great job, and you can really see it here once you pick it apart. So I started out in graphic design, like I said, and building logos was always really interesting to me. And I think we all know Slack, and I loved looking at this diagram, this representation of how the logo is comprised. And it's really interesting to me. It's just a 19 by 19 grid, and then each of these components is 4 wide. So no matter what it is, it's 4 wide. These are square. And then they all 1 unit apart. So it doesn't matter what the unit is. It's always made up of 19 by 19 grid. It could be 1 inch or 1 pixel. But the math here, the detail of the math here is what makes it look so nice. And you don't really notice that unless if you really trace it or diagram it. And another thing I thought was interesting is they use this math here too. One thing you learn when you start copying is that there's a lot of math involved. There's a lot of, I would say, beauty in making things symmetrical or properly spaced mathematically. You notice that thing almost subconsciously. So interesting to me here is this is 5 units. So it's one of these plus a spacer unit is the distance between this is called a logo mark, and this is the type. So that's the spacing they use. So that's mathematical. And I also like how they hung the lowercase letters aligned to the top of this. And if you sort of squint, you could see that it looks like it's completely centered from this to this. Like they look great horizontally centered, and it's just an optical alignment. And it's not mathematical. So sometimes you have to do that. But just seeing that detail to me is really interesting. And if I'm designing a logo, I would maybe use this. What I thought was really interesting with the Netflix logo, I saw this on the company, I think it's Moving Brands that designed the Netflix logo many years ago, or redesigned it, is everything is equally spaced. So the width here is the same here, is the same here, and then the spacing, so this width is the same spacing here. And one thing that I know is difficult to do when you're creating graphic design, you're creating logos, is to make this shape look really nice. This arc here is actually quite difficult to look natural when you're just drawing it. And so showing these different percentages of arcs here and how this low percentage of arc matches up to the height of these E's, that type of detail to me is really interesting, and it's something I can carry forward. Another quick example, I don't want to focus too much time on graphic design, but I think it's, again, really helpful to see these details, is I learned quickly when I was developing logos and drawing them myself, is that there's usually never a point in a logo where there's a straight, sharp edge. It's always rounded. So I found this is what Illustrator looks like if you just see the outlines and then these are called vectors. So if you zoom in and see all of these vectors, even this that looks like it would be a sharp point is actually a rounded point. And the reason why that is an interesting detail is because when you're drawing this, if I drew this with a marker that would create the same lettering, there would be no sharp corners. But if you're drawing it on a computer, you may think there is and recreate it, and it won't look as natural. So again, understanding those nuances is really, really important. Okay, moving on. There are no excuses to get started. So all of the decisions have been made for you. This is one of the most daunting things to look at when you're starting a project. The blank screen, the blank page to write with, the blank canvas to draw or paint on. Copying is a great way to sort of jumpstart just getting your ideas flowing. Anything from an app to, drawing a picture, copying from something will be a great way to get started. So you don't have any excuse not to get started. Copying is also a great way to learn design tools. So this is something that I started telling a lot of people, to do, because it seems like you can't. You try to go online and do tons of tutorials, which is fine to do a few just to learn the basics, but you're really going to learn how to use any design tool by practicing with them. And just like the blank, the blank page earlier, if you're copying something, you don't have to come up with an idea to design. And if you're copying something and you're learning a tool at the same time, you're going to copy something that was well made. So you're going to get practice using a lot of the different features that the product has to offer. Also, if you're in the design field, software changes a lot. So this is the first version of Sketch that I used, and it looks a lot different than the current version. And when new versions come out, new features come out, Sketch didn't have prototyping and animation at all when it first came out, and now it does. And a great way to learn all of that stuff is try to recreate an animation that you saw and that you like. Interestingly, though, what I love about Balsamiq is it actually hasn't changed that much. And what I did, and the reason why I'm showing you here is that I think if you're totally new to UI design, or you haven't designed anything, you're new to UI design, Balsamiq is actually a great tool to use, because a lot of these components, as you may see, are already made for you. So you just drag and drop. And another, which I think is equally as important, is you can learn the names of a lot of these components that make up an interface just by going through all of our symbols here. So if you're new to UI design and you're on this webinar, you're watching this, I would try some tool like this where you don't have to you don't have to recreate everything from scratch. You can start by manipulating these ones that already exist, almost like a template, and build stuff yourself and start building your design vocabulary. And finally, I think, quickly prototyping ideas is the one. So using copying to quickly prototype ideas, it's something that I actually use the most now as a professional designer, because a lot of people have ideas. You're in a meeting and they want to try something really quickly. You can sort of think of a few different existing products that do similar things, and then copy parts of those interfaces, add your own content, and then you have these new ideas that you can present to stakeholders and present to users to get good ideas out of. So I didn't actually really think of this until I was at this. This is from Apple. This is from WWDC in 2014. And they had a great session on prototyping. And this is literally what they taught us. Use existing Apple applications, take a screenshot. This is the camera roll from like 2015 or 2014, actually. And recreate it, change the text, change what you need to match what you want to show to people. So if you know anything about Apple prototyping at WWDC, they always do things about toast. I don't know why, but it's a great idea, I guess, but it was something I never thought of. In combination with the video from Jim Coudal, who was talking about ripping things off and practicing, I thought this was a great way, especially when you're doing app design. Android and iOS have specific frameworks that they use. There's very specific design patterns that almost all of their applications should have. There's like a top area, and then they have the tab bar here. All of those things are patterns that are reused in a lot of applications. So copying existing iOS applications or Android applications would be a great way to jumpstart a new application that you want to build. All right, so let me walk you through an example. I actually used this idea of copying, looking elsewhere for inspiration and bringing it home when we decided to redesign Balsamiq's Learn site. So I'm assuming a lot of you have been on our website. It started out like this. This was the first version of balsamiq.com/learn. And what it was basically a hub for all of this content in here. And then you can quickly meet us. But the idea is you would come here, you would pick one of these 4, and then go from there. I really call it that we started content first, which is something that if you know me, I love. We had a lot of material, educational material, and we didn't really display it in a way that was easy for you to browse and stumble upon something else or any of that. It was all just sort of like a hub. But we knew we wanted to change it. So by the time I started working here on the education team, this is what the site looked like. We added a little bit more information. We were showing you more options, but it really wasn't something where you can come here and discover. So we created this project. learn site redesign, excuse me. And the first thing we did was look for inspiration and start copying ideas. So the way I do this is I know that we want to have a homepage that is interesting to look at, that you can browse many different types of content and decide what you want to learn. So what we did is we went out and looked at other companies that have learn sites or blogs with educational material. And what I do is I just quickly create wireframes of those layouts, because it's not about the content, it's about how you're presenting the content. So I can make really quick wireframes of, this is Headspace. They have a great blog. I love the layout. It was very visual and I thought it looked cool, and I love the typography. I like the little, the way that the categories are above all of the article titles, stuff like that. This one was from American Express blog. And what I liked about this one was the trending topics were called out, and that's something that we were going to have. We have a lot of different categories of articles that we wrote. I also liked how this top story here looked. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but I liked how the image that was going to go with this broke through the plane of this color. It had like a nice dynamic look for it, so I recreated it with this. But this was my favorite area, which highlighted 4 articles and then had 5 more on the side. Maybe we could do whatever we want with it, but it sort of called out, these are the ones that we want you to read first, and here's some more that we really like. Choose your own adventure. You get a sense of these because these have thumbnails. Again, using these, it's very common to use these categories above a headline. These are things you notice too when you start really looking at all of these different educational sites, how they organize article snippets and links to other things. Categories above the title is very popular. You may not notice that if you're not really looking at it. This one was from Wistia, and I really like the way that this was laid out with one big image. This sort of cuts through here. I thought this was really dynamic. And then instead of having imagery for these, it was just text. We didn't have a lot of imagery for our articles, so this really resonated with me. I also really liked the header, sorry, the navigation, the header here, yeah. It was nice and simple, and I was like, maybe we can keep it really simple and have a really prominent call to action where you can come and join our Slack community. And if you haven't joined our Slack community, please do, because we love chatting with everyone. So really quickly, what I did for this was, again, create a whole bunch of components. So I would see layouts that I liked, recreate them as wireframes. And then what I did is I just wrote patterns that I copied. And I'd start plugging them into a layout to me that made sense of how we can lay out our new homepage. And so I took, one of these pieces and put it here, and I took some of these and put it down there, and I moved stuff around, all from copying these patterns. And then what we did as a team is we made probably 10 versions of this, and then decided on one that we liked, and then just started coding it. So we didn't have to dive into high fidelity design. We went right from wireframes to coding because we already had an established style. We had a lot that we could use without having to visualize the high fidelity. We knew what it could look like just based off of the other design patterns that already existed. And so this was a great way to come up with a totally new design by copying other people and just really noticing how other people are presenting their work. Okay, I think I'm gonna start, well, let's recap. So copying really helps you see the thing you're copying. And I think I've talked about that a lot. I love that it removes any excuse to get started. It helps you learn new UI design software or new features, which I think just as important. And it also helps you quickly prototype ideas. So I'm gonna kind of show you these as I show you how I use this, again, at Balsamiq. So I did a little workshop internally here a few years ago about, this is an internal tool we have here at Balsamiq called Achataya, and I did an internal workshop showing people the process of copying to learn UI design. So this is a tool called Achataya that we use to do all of our project tracking. And we just thought like, hey, why don't we come up with a new interface design? So the first thing I did here was I made a copy of it using Balsamiq. So this is an editable version of what we just looked at. It's a great way, again, for me to practice using Balsamiq. So I quickly recreated this. And then what I did was I found an interface that I liked that I can copy the content from here into a new layout to see and just to show a new layout. So I really liked the idea of using the podcast app from Apple. And what I liked about it is I saw similar things. So I see this as projects, this area of my episodes. I like that you can highlight one. When I saw this highlighted, I imagined it would be like an accordion that you can open for more content. I liked that the layout was really streamlined. You can put different content here in this side area. And also that these can be matching up. I'm gonna move this over. These here could be accordions for these other areas called coming soon projects and on the back burner. So I'll just show you really quick how I did it. Let me just move some stuff around really quick. Okay, so the first thing I do when I'm copying is if you haven't recreated this as a wireframe, then you just start typing over. But because I did, all I do is just start copying and sliding everything over. So this is the team. And I'm just gonna put them in the spot. So this is the big team image, and I'll just draw it. So the way that you can draw really quickly in Balsamiq, we have some quick features for text and rectangles is if you just hold the R key and drag, it just makes a rectangle. So I got that. This is the team name. I don't really need too much here. We do call out our quarterly goals so everyone in the company knows. So I can just put that underneath here. There's a lot of dead space below this stuff I don't really need. So I'm not gonna really worry about it. But then the next thing that we have is current projects, which is what we wanna call out. I'm gonna focus on this section. And then there's a few ways I can do this. I can just copy all of this over and it'll just be a list right here. But I kind of want to change it a little bit. One thing is, if you've seen any of my other webinars, I don't like hanging icons hanging or being in line with text, so I always do that. But I think that's fine, and like it's literally that easy. But I kind of want to recreate this so that I can show what it's like if I wanted to open a project. So I'll have to just sort of do this, and I will go right there to whatever's underneath it. Image permalinks is where we're going to go. I'll copy that. So now I have this area here that I can show more information about the project, and I'll move this down. Copy that, paste in the old stuff. So this was built with a component called list, which has a background to it. So I'll just get rid of that really quick because I probably could use it, but right now I don't want to. So I'll just go to transform to and then text. So it'll treat it very similarly, but without the background. So this looks kind of like a mess. Don't worry, I will fix it. I'm going to add another rectangle. So anytime there's something on my canvas here, I just copy it. And so I'm going to recreate this box. And I want a border, and I want them both to be light gray. So I want the rounded corners. Okay, so now I kind of have this broken up a bit. I can move another thing I want to do, sorry. I'm going to tell you a key command again, but if you hit the slash button on your keyboard, it activates this area. And I'm going to do H rule because I want to have like a horizontal rule. As you can see, they use these a lot. This is called a horizontal rule. Very common to just visually break up sections in an interface or in a printed piece too. So I'll go all the way across. I'll match the width of that box. Maybe I won't. I kind of like that it doesn't. And I'll change the color so it's not too bright. Now I want to do is break up these a little bit, so I'll have to remove that. And I'll show you in a second. So now I just sort of copied this layout. I do want this to be a little wider. But now I have this area that's like open. I want to show that this is an accordion thing that opens. A few things. So I think I am going to make that a list so that I can make it bigger. Or I can just make it bigger and add space. But I kind of want the text to be bigger. I want to be able to read it more easily. It doesn't have to be so tiny. It'll help me if I'm browsing this, especially if it's my team and I'm just trying to find a specific project I'm working on. Let's get everything some space. I'm not going to spend too much more time on this because I think you get the gist of it. But using something that already exists, again, just like Jim Coudal said, like, does it speak to you or resonate with you? Do you see it in a way, you know, that you like? Copy it and see how it was made. I thought this layout is really good. Kind of want to add some space. I'm getting a little too designy here, and I don't have to do that right now. But I also think it would be good to have more info in here. So if I wanted to quickly peek into it, you know, all of these have a little bit of like 3 lines of whatever was written in there, and I could just keep that for just one of them. So you can see a little bit more about the project. You type in Lorem Ipsum, it automatically adds it in there, which is a nice, smart feature. And let's keep it, maybe not that light, but light. Let me get rid of this. Let's do a lot of copying because I'm gonna do these. See, always the perfectionist, sorry. Anyways, you get the idea. You can put all of these in here. And now I have something I can go and show, you know, my coworkers, anyone who, you know, stakeholders, anyone. I had this idea. What if we did this layout like this? Still more to work on, but what I did is, this is what I came up with while we were working on it. As you can see the similarities here. I took this area and turned it into, you know, I made the hierarchy different, larger team name, quarterly goal, if there's any more details. And then I sort of just got rid of all of the background information, but you could still open one and view a project. And then how I saw this and what I liked about it is in the original, there's a lot, like a big wall of text, and it was hard to focus. And here, each team has a very specific area, just like this does. And you can scroll much easier through it. So also, if you saw this, you would be like, oh, that looks like iTunes. Because what happens when you're copying is you completely change the initial design. And that's exactly what you should be doing. You're just using it as a jumping off point to start building your ideas. Okay, so I want to do one more, and I want to leave time for Q&A. But this one to me is really interesting because you can do this not just with, you know, I think what I want to prove is you can do this with a big data heavy piece of content too. So this is actually a recreation of a project I worked on many years ago. It was a purchase ordering tracking tool, and it was extremely complicated. They spent a lot of time basically taking everything that was in these large Excel files into the database and then making these, sort of visualizing what it would look like. So what I have here is just my notes on the UI. Like, I don't like that this is the tabs that affect here, because it's confusing to me that this, Eric Kennedy has this great saying where one of the rules of design is like an element that affects the main design needs to be associated and near the same design. And this is not associated with this. So it's just something that will confuse you. Also, I don't like this gigantic search area. One thing that is not commonly known, you guys don't know this, but this design is used on 6 of the tools. So if you go to a different tool, they'll have a different search bar here. It all looks the same and it's kind of confusing. And also this search is just searching here, so it should be here. A lot of issues with just scannability and usability. So what I wanted to do is demonstrate today how you can take this design and recreate it into something else and then show people how it could be more usable. So the first thing I did was I recreated some of the content from this into wireframes. So this is the header. These are the, I guess, the tabs for the table. And then this would be some content for the table. And so I don't know why it's not written. Oh, let's see. Yeah, so what I did was I wanted to highlight that if you're doing this, you can do it just for, just to show your boss or whatever, the stakeholders, an idea. But I think it's always a good idea to really understand the data. So like I'm saying now is that I really understood that these data points, these 5 data points, were the top data points you'd want to look at when redesigning this table. Like if I'm using this table, I'm really looking at probably these notes more than anything, because that was a big deal for building it. So I look at this, I'm trying to think differently. I want it to be more usable. Something that popped in my head was the interface for this application called Help Scout, where it's sort of like a customer service application. And it breaks down everything. Like this is a little more functionality than we need, but what I liked was mostly this area. This could say PO, purchase orders. This would be the filters. You can search over here. And then this would list out the 5 data points that are really important. And just it'll be easier for you to use this than it would be for the other table. The other table had too much stuff. Let's try to slim it down, show less content, and make it more usable. So how I would do this was in Balsamiq, we have this new feature. I'm very Balsamiq demoing today. But we have this new feature called extract text. And what it's going to do is read all the text through computer vision and recreate it best it can in Balsamiq, and it is still in beta. Actually, sorry, I'm gonna have to do that again because I want to keep a version. So just bear with me. So it does mess up a little bit, these images. I don't know why, but it recreated all of this stuff, which was great. It has all of this, all of that. So I can use that if I want, or I can change it. So what I think I'm gonna do is first sort of draw the UI a bit. I'll use the rectangle tool. Just holding down the R key. This should be, let's just match the blues. This is darker. And then this one. And just go here. Let's see if this is too dark. We can send those to back. Okay, now that I have it set up, I'm gonna start just kind of overlaying stuff. First, I'm gonna delete some of this stuff I don't need. I'm not gonna use that, I'm not gonna use that. I have my structure behind it. So, logo will go, actually what I have to do first is bring this to the front. So layering front, you want it to be on top of what I just drew. We'll line it up there. I like having these here. I'll put this here for now. I think everything's gonna shift down, but I can put this here. Oops. And kind of have that as like my profile area. Whatever, I'll figure it out. I do like search here, but I think search needs to be inside of this more, because search is a way to filter as well. So I don't want search to be all the way over here, not prominent. I want it more prominent. What I like about having these here is I don't have to do anything but just drag and actually, I should probably get rid of this stuff. Or I can do all POs, open POs. This is even easier. Okay. That's all we have. We'll just do open, even though I want it to be. We'll do all, even though I want it to be open, just so that I don't have to move anything around for now. But this is a good sense of what it could look like. Kind of want this text to be bigger. I just like things a little bigger. It doesn't have to be so teeny tiny, but we'll figure that out in a little bit. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I don't need any of this content. I think I have my own. I recreated it. But I do want to add rule lines. There you go. And change the color. Let's go light. I feel like Bob Ross here, talking about colors, brush strokes. I have that one, but I think I want these to be bigger, so I don't have to go by this. So probably can delete this now. I'll just go ellipses here, so it looks better. But like, okay, so I used that. This is gone. This is basically the header row. So I can just drag this to the header row. Obviously, these need to come in, so I'll just line it up with my name, just to have something there. I know PTM notes are the big one, so maybe I can just make everything. It's 15, make it 14. This is all 15 anyways. Let's align it to the top. I don't want it to be 15. Just to fit this layout for now, and I can adjust it later. Let's make it smaller. Okay, so this table's a little smaller, so I'll do that. Spacing's probably different. Nope, spacing. Look how easy that was. I made the spacing right. This is leftover information I'm going to add in, but I'll probably be through some sort of drop down. I want more space here. No. Yes. I want to be able to read it. That's like part of the reason why I don't like this other table. It's not easy to glance at. I can't just pick a piece of information out and focus on it quickly. I want to be able to do that so that I can do my job easier, more confidently, that I'm reading this correctly. Okay, so there's one. Two things I want to add because I want it to be the ability to add more information, or to, like, here we have filters and stuff like that. So that'll be here. Anyways, we'll make this larger than it needs to be, just so you know it's there. I think I could do that a few times. We'll make this one the open one. And I know these are important pieces of information, so I usually go between trying to figure out, do you want the label to be bold or do you want the content to be bold? What's going to be missed the most easily, I guess. So we'll try that for now. Probably have other information. Another thing I want to add is the ability to add notes or edit notes. So this is the note. Maybe you click on it and it'll do it. Maybe there needs to be some sort of activator in here. Button. Edit notes. When you make buttons, make sure the action you're telling them to do is very clear, like make note, edit note. If there was no note here and it was blank, you can add a note. I want this to be gray. That doesn't matter. Yeah, something like that. I want to move this down. purchase orders to be on top. This is the purchase orders page. Search purchase orders. I like the idea of icons, so I can add some. Maybe folder open would be good. Do that here. Make them small, the other ones. And you know, you don't have to decide what that icon is now, but it's nice to show there though, like right globe. Say it's global. Let's do just a closed folder. I don't know, X. How about a weird funky symbol that doesn't make sense? I don't know. There's something like that. We can change all these colors to dark gray. This one's highlighted. Make it bright. But see, this is a really quick way to come up with a brand new idea. Before I did this demonstration, before this, I actually had these things from an old design. So this is what I came up with. This would be, and I'll show you here. This would be taking the layout, the content of Help Scout, the layout of Help Scout, not the content, and applying it to a really dense table, right? Taking this idea, making it on the navigation on the left, recreating this, but using my content. And then you can go and show the stakeholder and be like, what if this is what it looked like, right? Instead of now. And you can demonstrate, you can make this as a quick prototype and say, all right, the most commonly used cases for the PO tool is to do this, do that. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out through email, or you can reply to the email that we'll send you with the recording. Check out the BWA webinar page to find some links and resources, plus a PDF of the presentation. Maybe I'll include the sample files I worked on today so you can take a look. Yeah, that's it. Thanks, and have a great day.